Hello, happy Monday. Today I want to talk about an article from Ben Carlson, who wrote in A Wealth of Common Sense at the end of last week, an article titled Housing Market Nobility. And in this article, he really talks about how historically real estate has been far more egalitarian or available to more Americans than other types of investments, say stocks and bonds. And in it, he shows a really wonderful chart, which I'll share with you right now, showing what he meant by this. And as you can see in this chart, the bottom 50% of households own less than 1% of stocks. And in fact, the bottom 90% of households only own about 50% of the overall value of stock markets, where the bottom 50% of real estate own 10% of the market, and the bottom 90% own almost 87%. So all those numbers are confusing, but just know the bottom 90 percentile of Americans own 80% of the wealth in real estate, while they only own 50% of the wealth in the stock and bond markets. That makes real estate much more egalitarian. It's much more available to everyone. But in this article, what he goes on to say is that that's changing, and it's been affected by the pandemic. Because at the pandemic, when we had interest rates super low, if you owned a home or buying a home, you got an ultra low interest rate. That made the home really affordable. And then coupled with that, you saw 50% appreciation rates through the pandemic. So now you have a really valuable asset. So a low cost asset with a low interest rate that now has plenty of equity. And so you've hit the lottery, and you've become part of the real estate nobility. That is, you're the haves. Now there's a growing segment of have-nots, which we know as first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers are having a hard time getting into the market. In the past, there were some issues with inventory, or that's being solved. And now there's issues with affordability, higher interest rates, higher home costs, sellers that are unwilling to negotiate price points down and are taking their houses off the market. And so it's getting very hard to buy a house. And so what in the article, what Ben says, that might be creating a caste type system where wealth can only be transferred through inheritance, not from hard work. And that's a really interesting concept. And as he talked about this, he brought up another really, really good point, one that you and I might not always pay attention to. But what happens right now is that that if you're a boomer, and let's say, I don't know, you think you have 10 years to live, and your intention is to provide your house to your children, pass it on to your children, however you want to do it. Well, you feel trapped by the tax rules, because if you were to transfer them to your kids while you're alive, they're going to have to pay capital gains tax. But if you wait to pass it through your estate, you get your heirs get a step up basis that wipes out any capital gains tax. And so many homeowners think the only way, that the most advantageous way for them to transfer their real estate, to their children is through their estate to minimize the taxes. Now, you can talk to a CPA, you can talk to tax advisors, and there are other ways to do it. And as real estate and mortgage professionals, we probably need to learn those, because boomers are going to relinquish around 50 million homes in the next 20 years. So one way or the other, the boomers are going to separate from about 50 million homes. I think the number is 55 million homes. And what we need to do as real estate and mortgage professionals is show them how they should start transferring wealth earlier. Transfer that generational wealth created through real estate can be transferred using all sorts of really useful vehicles. Consult a tax attorney, consult a CPA, consult an estate planner, but it would be much more impactful to pass them earlier than later. And so we just need to help, these generations. We need to help guide them through building a generational wealth bridge that still minimizes their tax consequences. And a lot of that has to do with education and planning and gaining their trust and being well-informed consultants. But it was a good article. It's a good concept, this housing market nobility. I'm a raving fan of Ben Carlson's, and A Wealth of Common Sense is a free newsletter. I highly recommend that you sign up. I will put a link to the article below. With that, hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're off to a great start of the week. I hope you kill it this week. Thanks for giving me a little bit of your time. I look forward to talking to you again soon.